what you footage for. We are close to talk.
Right.
Ready.
Okay. We'll start by having you say your complete name.
My name is Seymour Cohen, and I come from Passaic, New Jersey. I served with the veterinary detachment of the 616 Pack Artillery of the 10th Mountain.
And what, oh, sorry, should I say that again?
Right.
Have I talked over?
That's
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about what year you joined the 10th?
I joined the 10th when I was first formed. That would be July of 1943.
And tell me a little bit about when you were over in Italy and you were standing guard duty at Consiglio.
That's cute. You really want to hear that story again?
Okay.
Well, what happened around 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess it was, the sergeant of the guard comes over to the place where I was bivouacked and called me to report for guard duty. And I and a fellow by the name of Roy C. Myers, at State Line, Pennsylvania, went to this big hole in the ground, relieved the other two men, and we had our carbines with us, and in front of us there was a hand grenade and a BAR, Browning Automatic Rifle, which I fired exactly once while I was in the service before that. And they told us, straight across this piece of pasture, the infantry lined tin cans straight across, just in case if the Germans came on patrol, they would rattle. When they rattled, we'd have to do something. Well, half hour passed, and it's pitch black. And all of a sudden came the rattle. And while the rattling was going on, searchlights looked like they was shining. And I said to my buddy there, Roy, I says, what in the world would a German patrol do with searchlights? So I said, you get out, go to the battalion commander's post, and call somebody out. And I forgot exactly who came out, possibly a major and a lieutenant, and they looked. And they said, how far have they advanced? None. They're just standing there, and with the rattling and with the searchlights on. Well, that's the way it ended. By the time my 2 hours was off, I went back to my place, and so did the other guy. And the next morning, I went there to see what was going on. There were about 24 sheep there. Now, when a sheep opens his eyes, it looks like a flashlight. Luckily, we never fired on those sheep, because if we would have, oh my God, the poor farmer would have lost his shirt. And that's the famous story of Consiglio. And that's the truth.
See, when we were on the bus yesterday, you were telling me a little bit about what you thought the difference was between the old 10th and the new 10th.
Well, in our day, believe me, as far as know-how, we don't even compare to these guys with what they have in the old.
Sorry, hey, are you rolling? Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Let's start over.
With the new and old 10th?
Yeah, tell me a little bit
Well,
what the difference
now,
was.
first of all, remember this, I was a veterinary technician. I was a pill roller, and that's the term we use, not for the human beings, but for the mules. But the artillery that we had in our day and the artillery they have today, entirely different. They beat us by a mile. They've got the latest and best equipment and so forth. So There's no comparison. To be a GI, you got to have a brain. In our day, you didn't need that much.
How about, what's the difference between the kinds of soldiers?
Individuals, you mean? Well, a GI is a GI. He does what he has to do and what he's told to do. For instance, when we went on bivouac, let's say we went for a field problem, the mules, you held them 6 inches from the cinch there, and you led them. And came to your spot, let's say after 10 miles or whatever it is, you unloaded the gun, they set it up, and they started action. So, but there's no comparison. Today's Army is much, much better than ours.
What other, can you think of any other reasons that today's Army is a little more advanced?
Well, with the computers. If a GI doesn't know anything about computers today, they don't even want you. I once met a sergeant, first sergeant from the 1st Infantry Division at Camp Eustis. We were there also at a reunion. And I said, Sarge, what are you doing here? You should be at Fort Riley, Kansas. That's where the 1st Infantry is their home base. He said, I'm up here picking up more information, getting an education on the computers. And he's the one that told me, if you go into today's Army, you're not computer-orientated, forget it. They don't even want you.
Can you think of any ways that the new 10th builds on the values of the old 10th? Ways that they're similar?
Well, similar. The morale has to be there, and I'm sure it is. And again, I watched on a video in Afghanistan, for argument's sake, where the 10th Mountain Division was a year or so ago. And the training that we received was entirely different from the training I think that these guys have today, because when you trained in the Rocky Mountains, those were mountains. To me, these mountains in Afghanistan looked like a hill, and it was cute. A GI was coming down from the hill, from the path, and he says, man, he says, these mountains, I might use the word suck. Whereas, and you know from the history, the Riva Ridge, how these guys worked and climb up there, and that was straight up. And they did it with the rope and the hooks and everything like that.
Is that an oral history?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have to go into politics. I don't want to go into politics. People might not like my opinion.
Oh.
What's going on? No, today's Army is entirely different from ours. To give you an example, the history of going up the Riva Ridge and Mount Belvedere, we lost a lot of people. And God forbid if they would lose them today, it'd be awful. In that combat, within 3.5 months, there was 990 somewhat people killed. That's it.
So let me ask you,
Okay, go ahead.
as a veterinarian, or as
A vet technician, yes.
technician, I mean, did you take care of the mules? Was that your job?
Oh, I'm glad you called. I'm glad you said that. Okay. We get to Italy, Naples. We go on a little boat there. We land in Livorno. And from Livorno, we got into trucks, and we went to Pisa. We got to Pisa. There were hundreds of mules tied up there in the corral. Oh, I said to my captain, Thomas Slaughter of Rogersville, Tennessee, I said, Captain, we're going to be here? Oh, no. He says, those aren't our mules. They're Italian mules. So what did I do? Just what I told you. I went on guard duty, and I pulled guard duty. Then they gave me a .50 caliber machine gun, which I never fired in my life. And they told me I'm going to be in charge of security. Now, do you want to hear a little story about being with a .50 caliber machine gun? We were traveling at night. War is hell at night. They shouldn't fight at night. Terrible. And we come to our destination, a town called Maglia. At that time, I didn't know where I was. And shells were popping, flying all over, about less than a half a mile away. We got out of trucks, jumped into the ditch, and we laid there. All of a sudden, the first sergeant howls out my name to report. Well, I make believe I didn't hear him. And then finally, he says, hey, go up there and see what he wants. Okay, go up there. The late Sergeant Roselli, who died after the war was over, he says, get your gun, and I want you to set it up. I says, who's going to set it up? I didn't have anybody. He said, I'll find you one. He found a fellow by the name of Buchanan from Missouri, I think he was, and we set up the gun. And he brought the gun to the opposite side of the ditch, and it's like a little curve. And I brought up the ammunition, put it into the gun, and by accident, his finger touched the trigger. Boom, boom. We almost died, because if that would have been a couple feet either way, we would have had casualties. And I didn't find out about that till 1989, till I met the captain of headquarters, Captain Lehman, and he told me what was going on. That was my experience with a machine gun. Now, if you'd like to know anything about the mules, our mules cost us, on the average, of $350 a head. They came from Missouri, or they came from Arkansas, or possibly other states. And we took care of those mules better than we took care, I think, of the human beings. It's like I said to my veterinary officer, how come you give the shots to the mule and we can't? He says, Cohen, he says, how much did that mule cost? I said, $350. How much did it cost the government to get you? I was drafted. He said, that's the reason. Yeah, the mule got darn good training. To give you another example, how to be a mule skinner wasn't easy, believe me. When we were down Texas, went to Camp Swift, Texas. Now, if you think you're in an animal outfit, when you got to Camp Swift, there would be stables. No stables. The poor mules were lined up for about a half a mile or so on a picket line and a trough where they got their water. And that's how they stayed for the whole 6 months when we were in Camp Swift. You go on a field problem, and it's hot, and it's sand, and we're mountain troops. We get to our destination. What happens? You put up a picket line for the mules. And remember, you just gone 10 miles. You're dead tired. You got a full pack. You take off his rigging, take off his gun, and a couple of minutes later, you take off that saddle. Then you take off his blanket with a carry comb, a brush. You're brushing him down to keep him nice and comfortable. After you do that, then you take him to the water hole, a big they put up for these mules to drink. You bring him to the trough. If you can't make him drink, so what do? You stay there until that mule drinks. Then you bring him back. After that, then you give him a feed bag with hay and stuff like that. Then you're ready to eat after an hour or so. That's being a mule skinner.
Now what about at Camp Hale? Did you have stables there?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Talk to Abby.
We definitely had stables there, definitely. And again, it was a tough job in the snow. They were good animals to get through the snow. You know, this, I can't prove it, but I heard they tried little snowshoes to put on the mules' feet to get into the snow, but it never worked. And you, as the GI, you were wearing a pair of snowshoes, and you had, as you're leading the mule, you had to be careful, because if he stepped on your snowshoe as you're walking, you're going to break a leg. So that was the life at Camp Hale. It was a tough life. It was rough.
A lot of hazards.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Semour, tell us what your outfit is there. What unit were you in?
I was in a 616, veterinary detachment, 616 battalion, PAC. PK in parentheses, PAC.
Gotcha.
Now,